Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Friday, October the 10th. It's always a great honor for us to touch base with an old guest of our show, a frequent guest of our show, and that is one of our favorite people, Richard Baehr, up in the Windy City. Richard, it's great to see you again. How you been?
I've been okay.
All right. Well, let me give you a little bit of his history about our show today, October the 10th. It was on this day that Spiro Agnew resigned, and that would have been in 1973. Mm-hmm. And you talk about a politician who just disappeared from everywhere. He resigned, and that was the end of Spiro. That's it. You never heard much else about him. So,
other there was a joke. There was a joke about when did Nixon know? Not clear, but Agnew.
That's right. That's right. A lot of people, I remember the 1968 election, and that was kind of the first time that I followed an election. And a lot of people didn't understand why he picked Spiro Agnew, because Agnew, at the end of the day, did not deliver Maryland.
Right.
So it wasn't, I don't know why he really picked them. I mean, when there were other choices, I guess.
That I know a lot of VP picks are kind of stunning. Tom Eagleton.
Yes, Tom Eagleton. That was another one, because he didn't survive, as I recall, right?
For about a week.
About a week, yeah. I still think the most interesting of all the picks would have been Dan Quayle, because even though I always thought the media was very unfair on Dan Quayle, because I thought he was a pretty sharp guy, but they beat up on him quite a bit, and I thought it was unfair, frankly, But anyway, we want to talk about a couple of things today, Richard, with you. One is the situation up there in the Windy City, which is quite controversial. The whole country talking about this. Even judges are talking about it. And then I want to get your thoughts on the shutdown and where you see that going, or the politics of it. Okay, well, let's start with the Windy City up in Chicago. And by the way, congratulations to the Cubs. Right. They play on Saturday night, so you've got the primetime game.
Right.
I'm torn there because, I was a huge fan, or I still am, I guess, of the Milwaukee Brewers. I don't follow them as much as I did when I lived up there. But I'm kind of torn on that game. But I'm looking at it from the perspective that if you put the Cubs on prime time, they're going to get a better audience.
Right.
So if you're Fox Sports, you're probably rooting for the Cubs.
Right.
Cubs versus Dodgers should be a good series.
Yeah, it's hard to dislike Milwaukee or their manager. I mean, it's an appealing team.
It is.
I mean, if it turns out the Cubs lose, it's better than losing to the Dodgers or the Yankees.
Right. And the Brewers have quite a story because of the way they've developed that team.
Right.
It's not a big market kind of place, so they've done a great job of developing their own.
And so I think a feisty team too. I mean,
they are
been exciting this year.
Yeah, I didn't, I thought it would go 5, but I didn't think it would go 5-2 and then 2.
Yeah.
I thought it would be more split.
Yeah, right.
But let's talk about Chicago because, as you know, I've written a couple of posts in American Thinker about this here recently, and I do not understand how the city of Chicago has been allowed to get like this, where there's crime and things are out of control. You have a mayor who doesn't even understand the Civil War. I mean, what happened in the Civil War? The guy's unfortunately quite a joke, I think. It's very sad, but it's quite a joke. And it always looks different when you're inside, okay? So you're inside the city. You see the problem from within. Is it really bad, or is Trump just exaggerating? How do you see it?
Yeah. First of all, I'm sort of an addict for statistics on crime. I've always kind of been interested in because I've spent a lot of time in cities.
I thought you only did that for baseball.
Yes, baseball, right. I've never moved to a city without a franchise. So
yes, that's it. Yeah.
In 1990, when Rudy Giuliani came in to become mayor of New York, they had 2,200 murders the year before he was elected. Chicago that year was just a little bit shy of 1,000. Now, Chicago is about 1/3 the size of New York, maybe a little bit more at that time. So the ratio wasn't completely out of line. Now, Chicago has 50% more murders than New York and has 1/3 the population.
Wow.
It means that the murder rate in Chicago is 4.5 times what it is in New York City.
Right.
So that's a problem. As you say, the mayor, on the other hand, is saying this is great news because we used to be 6 times New York's
Right.
rate, but have had, a slowdown in the shooting deaths in the last year.
Right.
And in fact, the attributable change over the last year is that the shooting percentage has improved for the killers. In other words, the number of killed to those shot is a little bit higher than it was the year before. And so the number of people shot has not gone up that much. The number of people killed, is still higher than it was when Rahm Emanuel left office as mayor. So we'll wind up this year maybe a little bit shy of 500, 450 to 500. That may sound like an achievement if you used to have 800 back 3-4 years ago. But, for 500 dead people, no other city in America has as many. No other large city has the same rate. There are smaller cities that have higher murder rates like St. Louis and Memphis. But in general, it's not an attractive record. And,
No.
If you have a black mayor who constantly is maligning the criminal justice system, he says the whole idea of incarceration is wrong. Most of the major crimes in Chicago are committed by offenders who have been arrested 50 times.
Right.
They're career criminals. And the way the criminal justice system works, the problem, if it exists, is letting them back out on the street after they're caught.
Right.
So, the police do their job. The prosecutor and the attorney for the defendant do their job, which is to get somebody back on the street and cut a deal quickly. And that's the reason the crime rate stays so high in Chicago. They don't want to put the people away for any length of time. Not enough of them anyway. No cash bail, of course.
That's right. Well, it is really that way, and it's very sad because, a lot of good people are getting killed, and it's generally black on black crime, as I understand it, right? Well, because it is in a specific area. I mean, it's kind of like, I think it's in the South Side, over by by Comiskey Park, if I understand the geography correctly.
Yeah, I mean, there are 2 major pockets for the violent crime shootings. One is a long stretch on the South Side, and the other is sort of the West Side. If you just go directly west of the Loop and go out to Oak Park. Where the mayor lives, the neighborhood called Austin, which is on the border of Oak Park, is one of the highest murder areas. But the mayor has something, 12 security guys.
Oh, sure.
Every time he steps out of his house, which is different than the rest of the community. But the murders tend to be in black areas.
Mm-hmm.
Carjacking, muggings on the street, those are everywhere, including in nice neighborhoods. And they almost make sense because they're more likely to get cell phones, purses that have money in them, and credit cards, valuables, jewelry in those areas than they might on the South Side or West Side.
Yeah, and it is really sad because I was thinking, I wrote in my American Thinker post that the most depressing job in Chicago has to be the fellow or the lady who reads the news on Sunday nights at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, whatever the local news is. Because every Sunday you start with the same story. Mm-hmm. 5 people killed this weekend, 15 shot, 20 shot. And, you would think after a while that whatever your party politics is, after a while, you would say, I got to do something about my city. And the governor of Illinois, I'm completely unimpressed with him.
Yeah.
Because he seems to be all about Trump. All he wants to do is talk about Trump.
Yeah.
Well, last I checked, Trump's not killing anybody in Chicago.
Yeah. I mean, what Trump may be doing is killing Pritzker's chances of running for president because Pritzker is not going to win that battle. He's delusional enough to think he could be the Democrats' candidate. And, he's been elected twice as governor, each time putting in about $200 million of his own money to fund his campaign, including funding the campaign of the guy he wanted to run against this last time, running all negative ads in the Republican primary so he wouldn't get a black opponent who was actually a law enforcement person. That would have been a tough one for him to run against. So he got somebody who was lamer. And when you pour all the money in and nobody else is putting money in at all, you tend to get what you want. So that's not going to work for president. When you were running for president, they're going to be well-funded campaigns by a bunch of people who are either more photogenic, quicker on their feet, have a better argument to make. I mean, Pritzker argument seems to be, I'm not Trump. Trump's wrong. So whatever he's saying, I will support the opposite. And that's nuts.
Right.
I mean, we elect a president. If the candidate I support loses, I still want the president who's been elected to be successful, do the constructive things, help the country so the country's better off when he leaves. That's not the attitude these days of a large percentage of the population. And I think some on our side are like that too. But there are definitely lots of people on the left who want failure, who want disgrace, who want them locked up or want them shot, as happened a couple times last year. And that's a really dangerous sort of position for the country.
No, it is. It's insanity, really, when you think about it. Now, I do think, though, that this talking about Trump all the time and making everything about Trump, it's kind of wearing out a little bit. And I'm specifically thinking of New Jersey, where the Democrat there thought that she could run against Trump. And then she comes across a very capable Republican who actually wants to talk about local issues. And I think in there you may be seeing the limits of this always talking about Trump. I hope so, because that race is right now, as I understand, very close to call. The Democrat could still win, I suppose, like anything else. But what I find most troubling about Pritzker in particular is, I mean, I have pretty much written off the mayor of Chicago. I hate to be that. I mean, but I think he's literally, as my mother used to say, there's an expression in Spanish that my Cuban mother would use all the time, and it basically translates to "you are a zero to the left," meaning that a zero to the left of the number doesn't give you any value. That was kind of the idea of the expression, and that's how I see Brandon Johnson. Frankly, it's just a waste. But
he was elected for one reason. He was an organizer for the teachers union in Chicago. Their contract was going to come up a year after the new term of the mayor who was elected. So they worked to get him elected, and they had their people out on the streets. They had their people going door to door. And for mayoral elections in an off year, early in the year, these elections are, in March, April, May. If you have an organizing effort and the guys running against you are better candidates, but you'll win because you'll get your people out. Right. And that's how he got elected. He wound up with a very narrow win. And I think right now, if there were a vote to impeach him or to turn him out of office, it would win by a pretty large margin. People think he's a zero. And I think they're pretty
He really is. He really is. I mean, I thought you couldn't do worse than Lightfoot, but I think you have, actually. I mean, in some ways, I don't know. I mean, Lightfoot was pretty bad too, Yeah. But now this fellow.
But she acknowledged, for instance, the seriousness of the crime problem, especially when the George Floyd riots broke out and people were ramming cars into very expensive stores on Michigan Avenue and then going on wild stealing frenzies. And there were weekends where 25 were killed, not the 5 you talked about before. Johnson seems unconcerned with that. It's almost like it's an afterthought. It's not what he wants to talk about. And since the problem is that too many blacks are winding up in jail, that's a problem. Well, they're winding up in jail in disproportionate numbers because they commit disproportionate numbers of the violent crime. That's simply a fact of life. And that's not just a Chicago phenomenon. It's just that the numbers are higher in Chicago.
Right. And one would think that Pritzker, if he really wants to run for president, would want to run and say, I put down the crime problem in Chicago, and if I'm elected, I will do the same in any other blue city, and here's how I did it. But he seems to be, I mean, again, it's all about Trump. I don't know where it's going to end up. because I know that a lot of businesses have moved out of these neighborhoods.
Mhm.
I also think, and please confirm if my judgment is correct here, but there's a lot of friction developing between Hispanics and some of these Black leaders in Chicago, because a lot of these Hispanics have small businesses,
Right.
and they're seeing their neighborhoods and their small businesses falling apart. So I see a lot of friction developing there too, Richard.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. There's on the Black community, there's resentment that there's a perception that these illegals have come here and they're getting everything. They're getting
Right.
free healthcare, they're getting welfare, they're getting jobs. Oh, who knows? The accuracy or the partial accuracy of any of that. But then you have the fact that these neighborhoods are beginning to abut. The Black population of Chicago has been declining, just like the white population has.
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic population is growing, as is the Asian population. So what happens is the neighborhoods expand, and they also come into contact with each other, and they really are in sort of different communities. And it's not a great surprise that friction is occurring right now.
Yes, it is. And in fact, when they had the 2020 riots, I remember watching a lot of the Hispanic leaders going on TV and complaining that their businesses were
Right.
not being defended.
Protect.
Because I think that a lot of these Hispanic communities are very entrepreneurial, they're very conservative, and I think that there's a conflict there, to say the least. But nothing would make me happier than to talk about the Cubs rather than the crime rate in Chicago.
Right.
And by the way, congratulations to the Cubs.
Right.
But it's.
I mean, one of the things, there's a perception, again, I think in part because of what people hear on TV, hear on radio, watch on TV or whatever, that says that the Hispanic community in general favor illegal immigration. So they resent the government going after illegals and in any kind of harsh manner whatsoever, or even going after them, period. And you'd know a heck of a lot better than I would about whether that's true or false, or to how much it's false. But that's my sense, is that that's a nonsense argument, that people who have come here legally are all for legal immigration.
Right.
People who come here legally are not sympathetic to illegal immigration, because it tends to create a reaction that leads to a limitation of legal immigration.
Well, it also, I always recommend to Democrats to look at what happened in Starr County and Zapata counties here in Texas, the two most Mexican counties in the entire state. And they both of those counties on the border voted overwhelming for Trump. And and when you would ask people why, they go, well, this illegal immigration is killing us. It's killing our hospitals. It's killing our crime. It's killing our schools. So I understand. I mean, I've been in, or I've seen some press conferences of the mayor in Chicago where even Black leaders are jumping on him over illegal immigration, saying, what are you doing?
Right. And part of it is that the schools are critical for Johnson, because he was a former union organizer. If the school population keeps declining, there'll be fewer positions, fewer schools open. So by encouraging illegal immigration or being sympathetic to it, they get more kids to come into the school system. Those are not kids who are going to wind up in private school. So that's essentially one of the ways to keep at least the population of the city more stable.
Right. I think if I had the ear of the governor of Illinois, which I don't probably, but if I did, I would say there's two things that can make you a better presidential candidate in 2024. One is the crime, do something about it. And the other one is school choice, because the best place in the world to have school choice is in many of these inner cities.
Right.
Completely, public education is completely falling apart. I mean, it's doing probably okay in the suburbs. I understand that. But when you get to these inner cities in Chicago, they're graduating. I don't know what percentage of the population not even graduating reading at the levels they're supposed to. I mean, how are we helping young Blacks doing something like that? I mean, it's totally ridiculous. But anyway, I just wanted to point out, if you run into the mayor of Chicago, one of our listeners, who's a history teacher, sent us a little note saying, according to the mayor, Chicago was built by slaves, but Illinois was never a slave state. So I just thought, if you run into the mayor, please remind him that our history teacher knows more about.
Yeah, I'm guessing that the mayor was able to graduate high school because he had a strong grade in physics to overcome his failure in history.
Probably. No, history is not one of his strong suits. Well, let me move on to a second topic before we run out of time, and that is this shutdown going on. And now, of course, the big distraction of the week, or the flavor of the week, is Obamacare. Mm-hmm. That somehow the Republicans are going to take away your medicine and everything. Mm-hmm. And, nobody, in my opinion, Richard, nobody wins when you have a shutdown. I've never been in favor of these. I think it's a bad idea for both sides. Right. But whoever wins tends to have a more logical argument. Right. And the Republican argument makes a lot more sense to me, the idea that they want to keep on negotiating, whereas the Democrat argument is, we're going to shut down because we don't like the big, beautiful bill. Well, the big, beautiful bill is what it is. They're not going to change it, Richard.
No, Republicans didn't like the $6 billion bill for provide subsidies for green energy and everything else they could pack into it. When you have shutdowns, it's more of a sort of obvious that the party's structure, civility has sort of broken down. I mean, these are not things that used to go this route. I mean, it's happening much more frequently now, and it's not a good sign for the sort of body politic in general. But as far as how this is going now, first thing, and again, no one will, makes much of this, but healthcare costs, even with so-called cuts, never decline. The cuts are off of a baseline, which assumes you start with A, and you get your inflation every year, you get your new enrollees, and then they take something off of that. But after they take something off of that, it's still more than what it was in the year the bill was passed. And so, we're not talking about any cuts to the amount of money that's going into healthcare. Not happening. The second is that Obamacare is something that the Democrats fiercely protect, because it's really one of only two things they can point to from the Obama era. One was Obamacare. The other was the Iran nuclear deal. Right. I mean, that's not one they're real proud of at this point.
Right.
So they got to protect Obamacare. And Obamacare, unfortunately, requires a lot of subsidies to get anybody to purchase it. It's one thing, the Medicaid component of it, that was attractive for states because they get 90% federal financing. But when you're talking about Obamacare, that's just buying an insurance policy, and they were too expensive with not enough benefits. So they got provided subsidies to make it easier for people to buy. And so it permanently needs those. And that's what the Democrats are trying to protect, because they don't want to see the volume dropping very quickly among people in that program.
Well, it seems to me, I mean, as someone who remembers the arguments for Obamacare back in 2009 and 2010, the argument back then is that we needed to have an alternative to the private system. And the alternative was, we want to make sure that everybody can have access without pre-existing conditions. Right. We want to make sure that poor people can buy a reasonable policy, even if we have to subsidize it. I mean, those were kind of the arguments that they were making back then. But what's happened now, it seems like they've put in a bunch of people into Obamacare, or the Affordable Health Care Act, whatever they call it. And as I understand, many of these people don't even know they have a policy, from what I understand, because there was so much fraud in the whole thing that I personally think, Richard, it's probably impossible to do it before the end of the year. I mean, we're going to have to renew these subsidies probably for now. But I think next year, when he delivers a State of the Union, I think President Trump should put forward an entirely different healthcare plan, saying, we're going to replace Obamacare with this, and you're going to have better coverage, cheaper coverage, and something that actually works, that we don't have to bail out every year as we're doing with Obamacare. That's what I think should be done, Richard.
Right. I mean, when Paul Ryan was the Speaker of the House, he was very interested in healthcare and the long-term trajectory for Medicare and Medicaid and their financing. Republicans in general I've always been nervous about healthcare because it's a democratic issue. There's certain issues that favor Republicans: national security, crime, illegal immigration. There are certain other issues that have historically favored Democrats. Education and healthcare are the two. So it's more the welfare state type issues. And the healthcare stuff is not that way anymore to the same extent, possibly because the Democrats don't have very good spokespeople to make the case that Obama and his people did. But right now, healthcare will bankrupt the country faster than anything else. Social Security will still be alive when Medicare, can't be financed anymore at the level it was. And that's, I've been using a lot of Medicare lately, so I want to thank the U.S. taxpayer for all your help.
Right.
In general, it's a tough issue, and you got to do it thoughtfully. People are nervous about something they have if they think it's going to be taken away. That's the advantage the Democrats have. They always argue Republicans are taking away your health care, or they'll take away your Social Security. If you're going to come up with something that's a replacement, you have to first deal with the argument that someone's going to have less. And that's a tough one. So
that is a tough one. But I do think that, that Trump connects a little bit better with that working class that maybe before the Republicans couldn't talk to as well. And maybe that's the advantage he has, that he can talk to blue collar workers. But you don't have to be an actuarial genius to figure out that it's not working. It's going to fall apart. And I'll just give you a quick example. There was a lady at our church. This is a few years ago when Obamacare came out. And this lady was a widow, and she was self-employed, I guess. So she had an individual policy that she used to have. Then she was forced to go into these Obamacare policies. And now this lady who's 60 years old, who doesn't have any plans of having a baby anytime soon, assuming she can, now she has to have maternity. Mm-hmm. How crazy is that?
Yeah, no.
That is what Obamacare was. But anyway, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Richard. And I'm torn between the Cubs and the Brewers because, as you remember, I lived in Milwaukee, and in fact, I can say that I attended their very first game when they moved from Seattle to Milwaukee. I attended opening day.
And I have your book signed by you, Cubanos in Wisconsin.
Well, thank you so much for that. And you were nice enough to write me a little review at American Thinker. And let me also thank you as one of the founders of American Thinker for publishing my stuff. And I hope that you keep doing it because I enjoy waking up every morning and finding that I got published, Richard.
Yeah, you're a great contributor and a regular.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Well, you have a great day, Richard, and enjoy again, good luck to the Cubs, but my friends from Wisconsin are not going to be happy that I'm wishing the Cubs. But I will say this last thing before you go. Some of the biggest fights in a stadium that I ever saw where when the White Sox, before the Brewers changed leagues, when the White Sox fans would come into Milwaukee, and that was an ugly place between the fans. So you drink a few beers and you let your baseball passions take over, and that can be a dangerous place to be. So I assume the Cubs and the Brewers won't be any better on Saturday night when they play, right? Saturday night when
it'll be loud.
It will be loud and vocal, and not necessarily the kind of language you want your family to hear.
You'd be right at home if you're from Philly.
Well, yes, and I'm not. And of course, you're right. If you're from Philly, anything goes. That's the only place in the world where they actually have a jail in the stadium, right? And they lock you up, right? They arrest you and put you in jail right at the stadium for drinking too much. So I can just imagine that, you call your wife from the jail at 7:00 at night, and she's saying, "When are you going to go home for dinner?" And you say, "Well, look, I'm spending the night in jail today because I acted like an idiot at the football game or the baseball game." But anyway, Richard, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and thank you so much for all your contributions. Always love being with you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I'll enjoy it too.
All right, my pleasure. Our good friend Richard Baehr. Richard was one of the founders of American Thinker many years ago, and that's how we got connected originally. But I find that here recently we're talking more baseball than we're talking about because he's a great baseball fan as I am, and we seem to be talking more baseball here recently than exchanging baseball notes, which of course is great with me because anybody who likes baseball is a friend of mine. Thank you so much for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Thanks to Sally. Thanks to everybody else who tuned in, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.